and verifiability, written by Carlo Luang, Rafael Enriquez, and myself, Bienvenido, with the help of our thesis advisor, Sir Christian Pullman. So today I will be going over our introduction, related literature, methodology, followed by our results and conclusion. So let's go into the introduction first. Now, when data, or government data, is stored in centralized servers or as hard copies, they can be maliciously manipulated or simply lost by the data owner. Now, contrast this with blockchain, wherein once data is written onto the ledger, it becomes immutable, and each transaction gets to be independently verified by different nodes. So that's why this research is developing and creates designs a blockchain system that can support the decentralized applications of government processes. And in this study, we will be focusing on the professional identification cards in the Philippines. So moving on to the related literature. So there are different kinds of blockchain, and in this study, we will be focusing on the public permission blockchain. So permission here is important so that we can know all the writers in each transaction, so we can enhance the accountability in each transaction. And public is important so that anyone can verify the validity of the ledger state, thus to prevent any malicious transactions from propagating in the network in the ledgers. And then Ethereum, it is a blockchain platform that allows us to store data in a decentralized manner. It also allows us to store smart contracts, which in turn, once executed, can manipulate our data on our behalf. And then Ethereum also supports a public permission blockchain. Now, for some stats regarding the Ethereum mainnet, it generates 13.38 transactions every second. A new block is appended to the blockchain every 13.08 seconds. And a newly appended block takes about 5 minutes to be considered confirmed. Now, here are just some terminologies to take note of. So PIC, that is the identification cards of professionals in the Philippines. PRC, this is the governing body in the Philippines that manages our identification cards. And CPD, so each professional in the Philippines needs to satisfy a certain number of CPD units in order to renew their license in the future. So they can attend conferences or seminars in order to increase this, for example. Now, moving on to the methodology. So the government process that we chose is, again, the identification cards of professionals, and this is to hasten the renewal process of our licenses and ensure the validity of our licenses. And then the blockchain framework that we chose is Ethereum because it supports a public permission blockchain. And then once we've created our decentralized application, we deployed it into our Ethereum network and ensured that the smart contracts deployed have access control. And we also made sure that we had an on-chain and off-chain data store. And then, of course, created our own front-end website to facilitate ease of interaction with our smart contracts. And then we tested the correctness and efficiency of the prototype by ensuring that the endpoints of the smart contract only allowed certain users, meaning authorized users. And we also ensured that the ledger was publicly verifiable. And we also looked at some costing and some stats of our prototype. Then we finally conducted some focus group discussions with our stakeholders and asked for their feedback regarding our prototype. Now, finally, for our results. So this is the architecture of our prototype. So the user interacts with our React website, and in the user's browser, they have a browser extension called MetaMask, which in turn allows the user to manage their Ethereum wallet. And then with that, the React website is able to interact with our smart contracts, which are deployed in the Ethereum Robstin test network. Then we store all of our identification card data inside of IPFS. And then the pointer to that data, also known as the IPFS address, is stored in our blockchain. Now, I would love to show you the whole app, but due to time constraints, I'm just going to present some snippets of it. So a professional is able to request for a new card. So if it's their first time, they can request for a new one. And then an authorized admin is able to approve that request. Note that it is only for authorized admins. So in other words, the smart contracts are able to implement access control. And then similarly, a professional is able to request for more CPT units. And then again, a authorized admin is able to approve this request. And then here we can see all the transactions that have affected a specific card. So the entire transaction timeline that have affected a specific card. And then we can also see the specific details of a specific card, such as their name or their profession, among other things. Now, through this research, we found several key blockchain mechanisms that are indispensable to the decentralized applications of government processes. And the first one is that it has to be append only, so transactions and events must only ever be appended to the ledger. Second, it has to be distributed so that each relevant government agency, as my colleague was saying, has to have their own copy of the ledger so that they can independently verify each transaction. Third, public is important because it allows many more nodes to independently verify and access the ledger state to ensure its validity, thus preventing any malicious external or any internal changing of our ledger state. And then, of course, smart contracts are important, so we can actually execute transactions. Tokenization, so that we have a digital representation of the data we're manipulating. In this case, that would be the identification cards in the digital format. Then we need an off-chain storage solution. In this case, that would be IPFS, so that we don't have to store everything on-chain, which is expensive, but at the same time not having to sacrifice any beneficial blockchain mechanisms, right? Now, we finally conducted our focus group discussions with our stakeholders who are professionals such as nurses, doctors, civil engineers, who have had prior exposure to the current PRC system. So they have a frame of reference when providing us with feedback. So the first thing that they said is that our prototype is more transparent and secure than the current system because of its decentralized nature. And second, they suggested that our user interface should look more similar to the current PRC system so that there would be an ease of adopting it. And third, they expressed difficulty in understanding and using decentralized applications and tools, for example, MetaMask, since it's a prerequisite to using the website. So they suggested that it should be taught to them first before moving on to the website in order to make it easier to use. Now, for some metrics regarding our prototype. So with Ethereum mainnet generating 13.38 transactions every second, and the PRC, the government agency, having a requirement of 650,000 transactions every year. This is a study as of 2020. So with 13 transactions per second, we can process around 350,000 transactions every working day. In other words, we are able to satisfy the PRC requirements as of 2020. And as for costing, it costs about 50 pesos or $1 to submit a transaction. And then with 650,000 transactions, that would be 32.5 million pesos every year. And then finally, let's move into our conclusion. So in this research, we are able to present a blockchain system that uses an off-chain storage solution, which is IPFS, and have smart contracts that have access control. And we are able to demonstrate the financial and operational viability of using a decentralized application to manage our identification cards. Moreover, the mechanisms that our prototype leverages can actually be utilized in other use cases. In other words, it becomes a viable blueprint or relevant resource for other government agencies that want to leverage blockchain. It becomes a foundation with which other government agencies can follow and build upon in order to promote a more transparent and verifiable government process. And finally, we would like to acknowledge the help of Accenture Philippines for providing us with financial support, and of course from Ateneo Blockchain Laboratory for their indispensable significant contributions to this study. Without them, this study would not be possible. So thank you so much.